I used to believe that love meant constant proof. Texts that arrived within minutes, calls that ended with endless reassurances, surprises that confirmed I was still wanted. But behind that belief was a fear, heavy and quiet, that maybe I wasn't enough to be loved without asking for it. Daniel was everything calm and steady, the kind of man who didn't say much, but showed up in all the quiet ways. When I was sick, he'd bring soup without asking. When I was tired, he'd rub my shoulders without a word. But none of it ever felt like enough. I craved more. I craved validation in ways he didn't know how to give. Every time he looked at his phone and smiled without explaining, I wondered who he was talking to. Every time he needed space or didn't answer a call immediately, I convinced myself he was drifting. I'd learned early. My dad left one day and never came back. My mum shut down emotionally after that. I grew up thinking love was fragile, like something you had to grip tight or it would slip away. I started fighting with Daniel over the smallest things. If he forgot to text goodnight, I read it as rejection. If he seemed distracted, I took it personally. He tried to reassure me. He really did. But my doubt was louder than his patience. One night, after a week of cold silence between us, Daniel sat across from me and said he needed space. Not forever, just some time to breathe. And just like that, my worst fear materialized. He walked out the door and I stood there, arms crossed, not from defiance, but from holding myself together. That first night alone was unbearable. The silence wasn't peaceful. It echoed every argument we'd had, every look he gave me that I'd misread. Every moment I let fear speak louder than love. I hated myself for not trusting him, for needing so much, for never just letting him love me in the way he knew how. The next morning, I bumped into Mrs. Coleman, my neighbor, who always smiled like she held stories the world had forgotten. She offered me tea, and for the first time, I said yes. In her living room, surrounded by faded photographs and soft light, I broke down. I told her everything, how I ruined what I had by doubting it, how I kept expecting love to fill my insecurities. She listened, and then she said something that clung to me quietly. Sometimes love isn't about being reassured. It's about choosing to believe, even when it's quiet. Because the loudest part of love isn't always in the words. It's in the staying. The days that followed moved slowly, like walking through fog. Everything around me looked the same, but it felt like something vital had been pulled from the air. I missed Daniel, not just his presence, but the steady calm he brought to my restless heart. Mrs. Coleman became my quiet refuge. Each afternoon, I'd visit her, and over cups of warm tea, she would tell me about her late husband, Robert. She spoke about how in 40 years of marriage, he never wrote her poetry or made grand romantic gestures. But every morning, he brewed her coffee just the way she liked it. And every winter, he made sure her gloves were on the radiator before she left the house. That, she said, was the love that stayed. Not flashy, not loud, but certain. Her words made me look at my past with Daniel through a different lens. He didn't say I love you every day, but he knew when I was anxious before I said a word. He'd show up outside my office with lunch when I forgot to eat. He remembered the exact way I liked my toast. It wasn't about the missing words. It was about the silent consistency I never saw, because I was too busy listening to the noise in my own head. One night, I sat by my window and wrote Daniel a letter. Not to ask him to come back, but to say I finally understood. I apologized, not for being broken, but for expecting him to carry pieces he didn't break. I told him I now saw his love clearly in the quiet things I once overlooked. I didn't send the letter, I just needed to write it. A few days later, there was a knock at my door. I opened it, and there he stood, tired eyes, hands deep in his pockets, but still there. We didn't talk much. He just asked if I wanted to go for a walk. And I did. We walked in silence for a while, too. But this time, the silence didn't scare me. I wasn't trying to fill it or decode it. I was just there, beside him, letting the moment be enough. Eventually, he said, I never left, because I didn't love you. I left because I couldn't make you believe it. And I understood. We're not perfect now, but I don't check his phone anymore. I don't measure his love by how fast he replies. I measure it by the way he looks at me when I laugh, the way he listens when I talk about nothing, the way he stays, even when it's hard. Sometimes the loudest expression of love is simply presence. And the hardest thing we'll ever do is trust it without demanding proof.